Hey, thanks for checking out this video on components of left-hand shifting for the guitar. I'm here to talk to you about a few of these ideas that I've come up with and how I work out the different components of the shift. So I think of shifts in three different categories. The first category is going to be a horizontal shift, and that's pretty much the most standard shift we see. So for example, if I have a note like a C on the second string, right here, I can shift up to the 13th fret and get that same note on that same string like this. And so I'm moving in a horizontal fashion from the head to the body, just like that. And it can be any distance. It can be much shorter. It could be from the C up to the G on the second string, like that. Those are all horizontal shifts. The second shift I think of is moving from the sixth string, like this, up to the first string, like that. So again, here I'm in drop D, so that's an F, and then up to this G, like that. That's a vertical shift, okay? And then the third type of shift, or category that I think of, in terms of like big, large ideas, is what would be a combination of a horizontal and vertical shift. So that could be any number of things. That could be moving from a low register, then a combination of a horizontal shift and a continuation of a vertical shift. So there's an example. It's from the Segovia scales. Just like that. Or you might have one in a slightly different format. For example, in the Villalobos Etude 2, in the opening A major passage, it goes like that. So we started at the lower register on the low open A, and then shifted all the way up to the E on the first string, across the neck. So those are the three types of categories. We've got a horizontal shift, vertical shift, and then a combination. So moving in a bit more detail, there are four pieces of information I think about when I'm shifting. The first is targeting. The second is the setup and launch. The third is the actual shift itself. And then the fourth is the landing, getting to an arrival. So, for example, let's use that Villalobos passage one more time. In that case, the first thing I need to know is I'm set up in second position. And where do I need to get to? My second finger has to get to the 10th fret on the second string in the configuration I've created for this arpeggio. So, for example, I'm going to start this idea. And notice I'm looking at that 10th fret because I want to look at where I'm going. I want to guide my finger rather than watching my hand. An easy way to have a lot of problems when you're shifting is to focus solely on the fingers, and then you're finding out that you're letting your hand make the decision rather than your head. So by setting up and then having your eyes target at your goal, boom, you're right there. The second thing I think about is that setup and launch. So for example, in this case, I know I have to be in like this kind of, in the way I've configured it, a funky little bar here where I've got my first finger across the fourth and third string, second finger's on the second string, and then I've got an open E, and then I've got to do a hammer on A to C sharp like this with 4. And I'm looking at that setup to make sure I'm not bumping my open E string with my finger on my second finger or my first finger and getting something like this. So I have to consider my setup carefully, because this sets the tone of the launch of the shift. So from here, nice clean setup. Now I've got myself in good position. I let go. I'm going to bring my elbow up, and that's my third idea, and that's the next part I want to talk about. So when you're shifting with your hand, the thing that actually leads that shift is not the hand itself like this. You want to think about using your elbow to lead your hand into position. So if you have, for example, from that C sharp up to this A, if I just simplify it and take out the opening notes and just work on the shift itself, I'm going to go C sharp, E on the open string, and then A, just like that. You'll notice as I do it slowly, you can see my elbow come in, and then my hand follows that positioning, like so. And it does the same idea. Elbow leads out, finger comes down. Oh, one little buzz. Oh well. Now, the fourth idea that we want to keep in mind is your landing. So what I mean by a landing is how you place the fingers once they arrive. Training your hand not to tense up when you get to your goal or your target. So as I move, back down for my other shift. So as you play around with that and get familiar with those ideas, you're noticing I take a lot of time when I'm working this shift out to get it nice and in place. So as I go a little faster, I've trained my hand not to tense up. So those are the four big ones. Again, that's targeting, setup and launch, the shift by leading the elbow either towards your body on an ascending shift or away from your body on a descending shift. And then finally, your landing, how you arrive at that shift by not tensing up. And the big way to practice that, again, is to think about slowing it down so you have control of your hand. As you get more comfortable with these ideas, it'll become more fluent and will become a natural response for you. To close up for today, I want to leave you with 3 details or practice strategies that might help you with your shifts. The first one that I use all the time and was shown to me by a number of teachers in a lot of different ways was something called a guide shift. So a guide shift is simply moving from one position to the next using a finger that doesn't leave the string. Notice in this case, I'm holding the D on the 2nd string, 3rd fret with my 2nd finger, and I'm going to catch the F on that same string now at the 6th fret. And what happens is as I play that, I'm actually able to have my finger just trace along that string without pressing down. It's not this, which is a gliss, which is a great technique to have, but maybe we don't want that. Maybe the composer doesn't want that sound. So in this case, instead of having a shift where I have to go and hop, take my finger all the way off the string and jump, even though I may have the targeting like that, I can have a bit more of an elegant shift, and this is going to help with that idea of the landing and placement. When I go into position, boom, I'm right there. So when you put this in the context of the piece, you get something like this. And you might have noticed as I did that, once I'm in 5th position, I have to go back to 2nd on that repetition of that idea, and I use a double guide shift. I'm here on the C and the F, and I just lightly move those fingers down. All right. Another type of shift you can use is something called a sequential shift, and that's taking, at times that might use a guide finger, but what it's really following and thinking about is placing the fingers down one at a time or in a pattern rather than sort of grabbing everything all at once. I can give you an example of that right here. So notice in that example, I moved from this position to this. Now it's arpeggiated in the right hand, and we don't really need to focus on how I'm doing that so much right now. But notice I never grab. If anything, if I slow this pattern down for you to see, here I'm moving that 1st finger over while my 4th and 3rd fingers are still in position. And you noticed I was holding this bar with my index finger on the 6th, 5th, and 4th string, placed my 3rd, and set up my 4th finger as needed. So that's another technique that's really effective, and you can use it in a lot of different ways. And so if you're having a challenge with the shift, you want to look to see, hey, can I use a guide finger? And 2, can I see if there's a way to have a sequential shift that's possible? The third thing, and this is the really big one that I find incredibly helpful, is to look for open strings in your shifts. So what I mean by that is, For example, in this opening thing I just showed you in this part, I play an open E string, and that's my opportunity to shift. So I have a guide shift, plus I'm able to shift or move my left hand on that open E string, and it doesn't sound like I'm breaking the line. Listen. It sounds legato. When you put that together, there's another open string for me to move my hand back down. And you're able to do that same technique in that other section where I use the sequential shift, like this. There's my open string. I've got one fretted string as well to prepare.